Innovation Unplugged from the Alabama Community College System's Innovation Center takes you inside Alabama's workforce development. Join us for enlightening conversations with community leaders and industry experts showcasing experiences, addressing key issues, and celebrating successes in the workforce initiatives across the state. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Innovation Unplugged. I'm Houston Blackwood, Workforce Director for this group. In studio today, I've got Matt Heaton. How you doing, Matt?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. This is number 2 for the day. It's
number
exciting.
2.
Yeah. By Zoom today, we've got Randy Sparkman coming from Hartselle, Alabama. He's a retired NASA engineer, and now he serves as an AI consultant for all things AI literacy and workforce applications. Also part of the City of Huntsville Education Task Force, looking at specifically AI applications in that world. So, Randy, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Good. Nice to be here with y'all today. Look forward to our talk here.
Yeah, absolutely. What I like to say a lot of times, because it's absolutely true, is often I am the least smart person in the room. So bringing you on today, I got to do some research and make sure I had all my P's and Q's so I can keep up with you in this conversation. One of the most brilliant guys I know, and I'm glad to have a chance for you to dump your expertise onto our work.
Good. Well, the nice thing about AI, Houston and Matt, is there aren't many real experts out in the real world. I mean, there's some computer scientists that understand how this works, but for everyday folks, it's a mystery still. So we're just all learning together, I think.
Yeah, we are, and we've got a team member that's working on the Lieutenant Governor's Task Force, and I met with some folks in Huntsville today that, I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are wicked smart. I can't keep up. But you mentioned a phrase, everyday people, and that's who our audience is with Skills for Success. We take folks who are trying to level up, get in a job or level up in the job they have, and they're just good folks trying to work and grow. And this AI thing has become something to deal with, something to use. And so I wanted to apply all that. But before we get into all those things, Randy, give the audience a background of who you are, where you came from, and how you got to be here today.
Good. Thank you. Well, I'm a Morgan County guy, just like you, right? Grew up here out on the west side of the county. I went to Morgan County High School while it was still Morgan County High School, and I graduated from there. I studied computer science and economics at UAH. Back in the early 80s, a long time ago, we were doing programming on punch cards 45 and 50 years ago, so it was a whole different kind of world. So then I went to work at NASA, and I worked there 40 years at Marshall Space Flight Center. Very blessed to do that. I was an IT guy the whole way through. Software developer, network engineer, application developer, IT security. Ended up as the CIO, the Chief Information Officer for Technology at Marshall Space Flight Center. We did a lot of enterprise work. There are 10 NASA field centers across the country. So over those 40 years, Houston, when I got to NASA, there were more ashtrays on desks than there were personal computers. Right?
That's funny.
So I was kind of hired to help, always to kind of help figure out what the new technology was. So I did that my whole career, and as I said, finished up end of 24. I was on the school board in Hartselle for 15 years. Just finished up my last term this year there.
Yep.
So that was a blessing to be part of that, to kind of give back. I had a different life because of Hartselle City Schools. I kind of grew up in a blue collar family, and I had some opportunities that came out of that. So I wanted to be part of that. So the collision of IT and my work and the school work led me, as I retired, I saw this AI coming. We had worked with AI in different ways for all the years that I was there. It was always sort of a stop and start sort of technology, and always had promise, but never could quite get it. But I saw in 22, this was going to be something quite different. So the timing was good. I schooled myself up on it. I wrote a little book in 24. It's like a non-technical primer for everyday people, and that helped me think about it more deeply. So since I retired, I've just been out working with school systems and helping the mayor in Huntsville and learning about it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, having people who can take that complex topic and boil it down into everyday language is powerful. And I've seen your posts, and we had conversations about it. So that's exactly what I hope that we can capture today. is really how the next electricians and carpenters and HVAC and dozer operators, who are all great people making a difference, but how they can apply this AI to what they're actually doing. So
Yeah.
good stuff, Matt.
Yeah, Randy, you mentioned 2022. Was that when you realized that AI wasn't just going to be another tech trend, but it was going to be something that would fundamentally change how work happens moving forward?
That's right. That's right, man. The first time I began to fool these things was the fall of 22 is when ChatGPT was released to the public. And again, we had worked with different kind of AI sort of development, but I saw this, the way they had built this chat interface quite intentionally to make this thing perform as a human.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And then I saw the capability. Even then, I thought this is going to be transformational. And in that moment, I realized there are going to be some people, some organizations, some schoolrooms that would really be able to take advantage of this,
Hmm.
and others that would not, because these are language-centered systems, kind of personal, um, individual systems, and that kind of we all react to that in a different way, have different verbal skills, not necessarily as a function of our education, just the way we're wired up. So I knew that was going to be kind of this was going to be a big deal. So yes,
Okay. So when you see that, and then from all your work in education, and you've seen so many changes in the school system in those 15 years, and through your time at NASA too, you saw many curriculums. So now the Department of Labor says, "Hey, we've got this AI literacy framework." You shared with me the other day, and I'd seen snippets of that, but never seen it all in one place. How does that framework now change what's happening in K-12 education or career tech education or even postgraduate studies?
that's right. Well, when the press took off with this and became every time you look at the newspaper or TV or whatever, somebody's talking about these tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was always the fear of disruption, particularly in schools, about doing the kids' homework, this whole
Yeah.
notion of homework apocalypse and all that sort of thing, right? So every sort of nonprofit government organization began to try to build some way to help people understand what this is doing, right? And the way we do something that's novel and exotic, the way we figure it out is map it to something we already know how to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's been all these flavors of these quote frameworks that came up, but the Department of Labor came out with one this just in the past month, really, that kind of and it's for how would a training organization deliver AI literacy? And that's a word that you see used all over the place. AI, we want to be AI literate, and it's used so much it's kind of come to mean almost nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in that sense, all they mean in something like this is they're trying to help individuals get enough command of the technology to use it for their advantage. So that's what this Department of Labor framework does. It just articulates first understand kind of the rudiments of how this works, like you teach a middle school kid how an internal combustion engine works.
Mm-hmm.
They may not necessarily ever work on a car, but it helps them to kind of understand what's going on with the spark plug and the cylinder and the fuel, right? So you want that kind of basic understanding of the technology, and then how do I apply it in the real world? How do I get advantage from it? And what are the pitfalls from it? So that's what the Department of Labor is doing. It's really it'll be useful for people like you and people, workforce developers trying to build some sort of a program.
Yeah. When you think about a young, inexperienced, say, take a high school student who's going through one of our courses, and he took the electrical helper course, and he took a framed up house and wired it, followed the directions. And then maybe he went to the Academy of Craft Training for 2 years of more advanced training, right? So now he really knows about the code and specific things. How would that kind of person use AI in his daily work to be more efficient or more effective?
Well, I think the first thing to think about is these, like I talked about, these tools are individual and personal,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you both of you have probably used these chatbots in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it meets us kind of where we think. In my book, I talk about four sort of ways that these things will help us. It'll help us understand information. It'll help us express information. It'll help us think deeper about information. And now they're beginning to be agents, they're beginning to act. So there's four things that they do. So each of those four activities are really personal. Each of us do them in different ways. So what So what this employee or the student that you're talking about does is they want to begin to interact with the tool to see how it works for them. How do they begin to command the utility of it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit? So that's what I would say is first understand it's an individual technology, and it's a general technology, and that you can use it for every domain in your life, by the way. And we'll get to some of that. So
Randy, what happens to that technician who understands the AI versus one that 5 years down the road never really dove into it to understand it?
well, man, I'm careful about the hype of this because I
Mm-hmm.
think it is overhyped in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I think it's pure employment advantage for the young person or the employee that you're talking about, right? Somebody that can, even if they're a forklift operator, HVAC technician, home health aide nurse, right? The ability to command these tools creates amplified cognition. I don't want to use these big old words, but
Yeah.
amplified ability, right, to think. I say in my presentations, they'll help you think better and do more,
Mm-hmm.
right? So who don't want that, right, in their
Right.
daily life? And really, because they're such individual technologies and they're almost free to consumers, you don't have to depend on your employer to provide you that capability. It becomes kind of your almost your superpower. So to answer your question, Matt, I think it's about employment advantage. I think regardless of the job, I think when people need to learn to use them for that reason.
Yeah. I like that phrase, and I appreciate your saying that let's be aware of the hype of this thing because it is still new.
Mm-hmm.
We're 2.5 years in. I remember when it came out, we used it for early on to create some of our lab plans because none of us. I remember specifically it was excavator I was working on. I signed up. I got my free account, and they gave me the skills. Like it was like 12 skills. And then we were like, okay, take these 12 skills and design a XYZ lab plan that includes these components. And we studied on how to write a better prompt for probably a year. And then we realized that it really wasn't, at that time, it still wasn't accurate enough. Like, as we would write these things and then we'd give it to the excavator operator, the subject matter expert. And he was like, well, that's pretty good, but it didn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really capture what, like I could have told you all that. And so, but we found better ways then to analyze, not really to write, but to analyze and compare.
That's right.
And so that was really cool. So now I say all that to say, we don't, just for the record, we don't use it to write our courses at all. We use it for day-to-day stuff. But when I look at our big work is in the community college system is construction and like industrial maintenance and then manufacturing, production workers. So what kind of insight you think in those three major areas that students, graduates or even long-term employees, veteran in each of those fields, how could they use this AI to be a better employee in the construction, manufacturing, and maintenance?
Well, and not to get too academic about it, but
Yeah.
think about when I talk about job integration with these tools, I mean, a job is a bundle of tasks. A school teacher does 20 different things in a day. A nurse does 20 different things in a day, right? Some of those tasks are going to be cognitive. Some of them are going to be thinking and writing and expressing. Some of them are not going to be that. I say three categories. One is physical and social. If I'm a nurse, there are physical parts of my day where I'm touching somebody, where I'm moving some equipment, where I'm installing a IV, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a social part of my job where I'm interacting with a family, interacting with a patient. AI is not going to do those things.
No.
Third part of the job is my executive function. I'm making decisions. I'm discerning, right? I'm deciding. AI may do that later, but for right now, we're not going to let the AI decide what kind of anesthesia to give to a patient.
Right.
Right.
Hopefully not.
And the middle part of that are these cognitive tasks where I am looking at information and a nurse is looking at a guide for a medication, right? AI can help her do that.
Mm-hmm.
She needs to write a letter to a family. AI can help her do that. So every job is going to have some cognitive surface that AI can be used for to take advantage of. So construction, manufacturing, all the things that we think about with skills for success, many of the tasks in that job are not going to be exposed to AI in the short term,
Hmm.
but there will be some that can create sort of an advantage for an employee, if that makes sense.
It does. A lot. So I don't know if I can say we're working on. Um, we want to have a sequence of courses where we have a land surveyor group who designs like a 20 by 20 pad and lays out the whole perimeters and all the points. And then we want to have some excavator, skid steer, maybe a dozer group come in and actually build that construction pad, as if they were building it for a building. And then the
Yeah.
engineer or the surveying students come back and make sure that everything is right. So when I'm thinking about those two types of students working together and looking at those plans, the outlines, how would they work together? The engineer type and the operator type. How could they use AI to work together to make that a more complete project?
That's right. Well, another kind of $10 word is modality, right? As these
Hmm.
systems have gotten better and better, they've moved beyond just the chat interface.
Yeah.
Now I can take my phone, right, and I can point it at a survey site, I can point it at a construction site, I can point it at a um, building or whatever, and it can have an opinion about what's going on with that, right? And then it can create the output in whatever form, an image, a audio, whatever you want to use, and those work products can then be shared across a job site or with other employees. So I think just the richness of the input and the output of the tool really makes it more useful for working together and working with other people.
Hmm. How follow up question to that? How much of the best use of these things is having the better question on the front end, or having the better questions as a follow up?
Both,
Okay.
both. I think, right? I think
Yeah.
when people first, especially when it first came out, it's less so now, but still we're still really early in this, and people want to use it like Google, right?
Yeah.
They want to ask it a question, it gets an answer, and I'm done. But the more you talk to it, the better the answers get, right?
Hmm.
The, the context when window grows and the system sort of gets smarter, and also we get smarter as we interact more on a some kind of a discussion, our
Hmm.
thought processes get richer, right?
Hmm.
So I think I really encourage people to use these tools sort of in dialogue as a brainstorming. That's that third element that I talk about of ideation and brainstorming. You're leaving something on the table if you just ask it a question and walk away from it.
Right. One of my favorite things is to put a bunch of documents in there and type out my dumb response and then say, what am I missing?
There you go.
Like
Right.
what have I not covered in my response here?
Right.
Um,
And one react to that real quick.
yeah.
So when you say bunch of documents, I mean it gets better. The more it can know about you,
Yeah.
the more information you can input to the conversation through this modality of uploading images, of uploading documents, it, the the tool gets better and better as you do that, and that needs to become just a standard way of working with the system.
Hmm. I agree. Matt.
Yeah, moving on to the next segment concerning AI and workforce training, specifically how learning moving forward must change. Dive into that a little bit for us.
Well, you guys are in the learning business, right? You're creating content to help learners learn,
Right.
and that's more art than science, right? We during COVID, everybody went home. We started trying to teach kids via Zoom and via however we did it, right, with asynchronous sort of learning, and that didn't work, right? We
Mm-hmm.
saw the learning gap in the schools that
Mm.
that kind of came out of that where kids didn't lose a lot of ground were the ones that tried to be innovative with that, right? So that's given the fact that online learning is not perfect, but these tools, these new AI tools, may have the potential to increase the ability to create content that's richer, that's more engaging with the student, right? To
Hmm.
create content that can be sort of differentiated. If one of your students learns better with audio as opposed to reading, you can now create content really easy to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then your teachers themselves can. You talk about not using the tools to make your content, but it will it will enrich the way that you build your content. So I think in learning settings, Matt, I think it really has the potential to be a helper. Um, I want to say though, I'm working with a lot of K-12 districts.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has yet convinced me that AI by itself, an AI tutor without a human teacher, is better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, can it augment? Can it give a teacher back 6 or 8 hours a week? Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still a role for the human in the learning transaction, I think. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, and uh, Houston, you got a question specifically to the Department of Labor?
Yeah. So that document that you sent us about their literacy framework requires a lot of hands-on. So they not just learning about all the fun things it might be able to do, but like walking the students hands-on through different applications. So teaching them really how to use, not for Google, not for research, but why is it so important that these AI instructors, AI, I get teachers for the simple word, really walk students through real application rather than just saying, "Hey, go use it for whatever."
That's right. Yeah, they have, I think they have five. I don't have it in front of me, the little framework, but one of them is they call it experiential learning,
Right.
right? They want you to use the tool because I think the fact that we respond to them as individuals differently. You'll use it different than I'll use it. Matt will use it different, right? So the way to see what that is to use the tool.
Yeah.
Right. Then you kind of know where the limit is, where the potential is, let you see what an hallucination is. These are statistical engines and they're guessing at answers and they're still making mistakes sometimes. So to learn kind of what that boundary is really emphasizes the fact that about the hands-on kind of learning.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What are the this interesting thing when you mentioned K-12 because Matt and I are both have a teaching background. That's where we
Yep.
met 10 years ago. Not really, it's 12. But like what are some of the barriers that schools are putting up? Like appropriate barriers, guidelines, not like, hey, we're not using it because you might cheat, but like what are the ways that some of the best schools are really guiding that whole process?
That's right. It's a good discussion. I think schools are really still early and cautious, particularly at the superintendent level, at the board level. I'll get to the principals a little bit, but they're still really cautious because they know how disruptive this can be. And there's two fronts, right? Because it'll do your work for you, because
Mm-hmm.
it'll give you the perfect answer instantly, it disrupts the productive struggle.
Yeah.
Your teacher, you know that a kid doesn't learn if he's not wrestling with a math problem.
Yes.
He doesn't learn if he's not wrestling with expressing his own thoughts. If some tool will do that for him, you've interrupted his learning process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the good news is that schools really understand it and they know they got to guard against that.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of this is these companies that build these tools are building them, unfortunately, like Facebook for engagement. They're spending billions of dollars. They got to get money back. They want to sort of hook us on the products. So they're making them really human. Every time I ask one of them a question and have a long discussion, it tells me how brilliant and good looking I am.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're
it's
doing
true
it
though.
on
It's
purpose.
true.
Caught it well.
Both of those things are true, but they're doing this on purpose, right? They want me to come back. They want me to buy the $20 a month subscription.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a vulnerable middle school kid and this
Yeah.
thing begins to act like a girlfriend.
Yes.
Now we got a problem, right?
Yeah.
So schools are really going to have to be careful with how they deploy the tools for the benefit.
So that's a great point and not really part of well it is part of our script but I saw something today. It was an article that said about how to use that. There was a certain prompt where you could tell your AI agent to be very critical, to not tell you that you're handsome and intelligent. Like, hey, tell me the truth. Like, talk to me like you're my father, and you're teaching me a lesson here. Have you seen that in the K-12, or have you seen that a lot in your studies and travels with this topic?
Just as people are that's a prompting technique, right?
Okay.
To get the tool to critique what you're doing, right? And I go one day a week. Hartsville High School has got a class for juniors and seniors, Introduction to AI. They're piloting a curriculum from the cyber school over in Huntsville,
Yeah.
Alabama, right? So we got 18 kids. I go one day a week, and I'm watching them use the tools, right? They're building applications and doing all kind of things.
Okay.
Seeing them interact with them, and kids are much smarter than we are.
Yeah.
they're much more savvy in terms of technology. They're much more difficult to fool, right? We're building these avatars and we're cloning voices and we're doing stuff, and they're too cool to be impressed by any of this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think so. I'm really optimistic about how this might go, but I worry about the kid or even the adult that
Yeah.
has some sort of vulnerability to this that can get into trouble.
Yeah.
Well, in our office, we joke like we all have named our agents, whatever we use. Like it's a funny thing because the first time we used it, it was an acronym for because we didn't want anybody to know what we were doing
Mm-hmm.
because we weren't sure, if it was going to fly with the college system. Like, we didn't want the word that we were using AI to write our stuff, so we named it something like experiential learning interface or something silly.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
There you
then
go.
so it became Eli, like Eli, and people thought that Eli was like a team member, right? It was like, well, Eli told us. And it was a funny joke. Went on for a long time, but then everybody jokingly named theirs. I think Matt's is
Pedro.
Pedro.
Yeah, yeah,
But we often laugh because someone will say like, "Oh, I was talking to so and so," and it's like you said that as if you were talking to a real person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
none of our people are in that kind of in trouble or potentially in trouble. But that's such a thing for me. Like I'm seeing these kids, Rowan's age, my son's age. And I worry about that they get too involved with it.
Right.
What kind of advice for the parents and grandparents and teachers that listen? What advice would you give them on guarding against that over dependence or exclusion of the world with the AI?
that's right. Well, I've got a 9-year-old grandson, and he loves Roblox, right? So
Yeah.
and those are social games, and you can see. So you don't have to use AI to see the addictive ability of the risk of the screen, right? So gaming, social media, so the advice is the same thing: that to budget time, to know what you're doing on the tools, to be sensitive about age appropriateness, right? ChatGPT will let a 13 to 18-year-old use it with quote parental consent, but they don't check anywhere to see where the parent
Right.
gave consent, right? Now, the tools that we're using in the classroom at Hartsville City Schools are Google Workplace tools,
Mm-hmm.
and the model that they use, the version of Gemini that they use,
Yeah.
is really supposed to be aligned and to be more appropriate for kids,
Okay.
to be more age appropriate. But it's a tricky problem, and it's all I'm trying to say is it's the same problem as games and social media.
No.
Yeah.
You just got to watch and know what kids are doing.
Yeah. Be engaged.
Well, and on that topic, I don't know if either one of y'all have ever watched the Watson show that has started coming on, but one of those episodes was AI and about it. But the young kid that was on that episode was also on the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and he was so secluded and got into one of these AI apps that always told him what it thought he wanted to hear, which was encouraging crazy negative things on the back end with discipline and stuff. So, being a former special education teacher, things like that kind of pop up as a worry and concern. Again, like you said, if it's not kept under wraps good enough with the teachers and the admins at the K-12 level.
That's right.
So on that note too, what becomes uniquely human in a workforce augmented by AI?
Well, I think that's another part of this whole K-12 discussion. It's a part of a workforce discussion too. So we talked about these three elements of any job, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're physical and social. There's an executive part of them, and then there's this middle part, which is where AI can disrupt, where we're thinking. In the thinking part of it, it will augment again our ability to understand information, to express ourselves, to think deeply, right, to act in some ways. But there's some human sort of durable skills, Matt, that AI is not going to disrupt yet, right? It will help us. We as humans connect with other people. We have intrinsic motivation to drive our own work, to have agency, right? And we're creative sort of individuals, right? So there's a whole set of human skills I think that are needed to be successful in the workplace that AI will not disrupt in the short term. Now it's going to continue to do more things that humans can do, and we'll see what that looks like in 10 years. But I do think there's a lot of that we want to develop the non-AI sort of skills in kids and workers, employees.
So that's an interesting point because it's already tough enough to teach middle school kids how to use their words and how to control their emotions anyway before all this comes along.
Yeah.
So now that they are able to have conversations in their video games, Roblox, Minecraft, and all these AI agents, what could a teacher do, K-12 people, what could they do to really foster that, keeping that human perspective?
That's right.
That's like, right. Do we have to accelerate what we're doing and just interpersonal communication skills?
I think there's a focus on that now. I think there's a sensitivity to it. Mm-hmm. So I think we double down on the basics. I mean, learning to read, learning to write, learning to compute has never been more important in the presence of these tools because we have to be able to command the tools. So I think for your learners, for the K-12 learners, mm-hmm. I mean, you got to put the machine in the right perspective, right? As an assistant, as an augmenter, not to make it the center of what's being taught and what's being used, and know the difference.
Okay, so putting AI in its place in the toolbox.
That's right, and making the kid understand, and make your learner understand this is a tool for you to use. Mm-hmm. When I talk to school district leaders, early on I'll say, you got two jobs. You want to teach with AI. Your teacher uses it in the classroom to augment the content, augment the experience, personalize it. And we don't know how good that's going to be yet. Mm-hmm. But we can be pretty sure that the workplaces of your constituency, of the learners that you serve, the workplaces that they're going into are going to expect command of these systems, mm-hmm. right? To be able to get the job and keep the job and advance on the jobs. So I tell folks, you're going to teach with AI and you're going to teach about AI. And that's what the Department of Labor is trying to do, right? They're trying to give you enough literacy, enough command of the tools so that when you go to the job place that you can use them.
Yeah, that's a great segue. For all the skilled trades guys out there, guys and girls, what are some AI tools they could use right now to make their life better? Or some tips or tricks with their ChatGPT?
That's right. Well, it's amazing that there are 8 billion people on the planet. 1 billion people are using these tools weekly. Mm-hmm. Fastest adopted sort of technology, even compared to electricity or anything else, right? And they're basically free.
Yeah.
And I've got access to the same technology that Bill Gates has got access to.
That's crazy.
Learners have the same access, right? Yeah. So you can go sign up for a ChatGPT account with your email right now, the free account, and you get 80% of what the $20 a month version will do. That's the first thing to do, mm-hmm. is begin to play with the tool, interact with it, understand this thing about to have dialogue. Don't just use it as Google search. Mm-hmm. Upload your documents. Now you got to be careful about healthcare and financial information,
sure.
and your employer's information. Right, that's part of this literacy. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't upload anything you wouldn't upload to Google.
Right.
And we're all pretty fast and loose with that. And the other thing is to use go sign up for some of the other tools, like the image tools, like Midjourney. If you like music, go play with Suno and make songs, because you're always learning then about how to prompt and what the limits are. But I say just to use the tools.
Gotcha. I like that. Just I'm thinking of a phrase, moderation. What's that phrase? Key to success is moderation in all things.
Yeah.
So having a little bit of knowledge about all these things, but ultimately learning how to command any of them.
That's right.
And, to a basic level, and then depending on what they do. Okay, that's really cool. I guess the skilled trades could be a lot of different things. We just had a meeting yesterday about audio video technicians. Should we build that kind of course? And I was thinking about if we built it down the road, like the AI component of that would be like the troubleshooting of, I've got this weird buzz in that speaker up there, and you upload your diagram, upload a picture of your diagram. And so I've got a buzz in speaker number 7. What, give me 3 reasons or help me figure out why I can't get that buzz to go away,
That's a good point. So all of your, I looked online, you got 35 or 40 classes. I mean, incrementally, you'll be adding AI content to all those. I mean, I think you
Hmm.
would, you wouldn't do it all at once, but as you optimize and build new,
Hmm.
how do I use AI in this job? How does that become a discriminator for me?
Yeah. Well,
One thing I want to quickly mention to go
yeah.
off script is before we run out of time, for your learners, they may not have rich human networks of
Hmm.
people to support them. They may be having to figure out how to do their taxes by themselves.
Yeah.
They may be having to figure out how to develop parenting skills, right? They may be having to figure out how to interact with an insurance company, health insurance company, right? So not only will these tools help you at work, but they help you in your everyday life, which
Hmm.
is another reason I think to develop that kind of literacy. Um,
Yeah. So we met, like, was it Friday? We had a meeting with the Huntsville AI. Was it
It
Friday? Yeah, it was
was, yeah.
Friday. And that was the whole goal, is to create a like a 101 that everybody gets in every course. And to your point, something we could go back and put in all of our courses as a module, or maybe rewrite and embed. But then there was a 201. So the 101 would give them all that basic stuff, like, hey, here's some different ways you can use it. Basically the framework for literacy. But then the 201 gets into some of those more detailed things about job specific or business specific. You mentioned
yeah,
taxes and all different things, but then of course I guess with parenting and schedules and all kinds of stuff. So our last question on this thing was, if you were a I can't say it, a skills for success student, what would you need to do today? Really, what should you start doing immediately? And I think those three or four things you mentioned were really powerful. Of, it's not just the professional side; it's the personal side too.
absolutely. Right.
Because we want our skilled trade students to be, Johnny on the spot when they complete, but they still got to run their families, run their houses, and
Yeah.
be cool. Randy, we're getting close. We're about 40 minutes in, I think. What final? If anybody listens to this show, what do they need to hear from you? Like one takeaway.
Well, I think the big message is to leverage this to your advantage, right? I mean, when I started out with with computing and learning about these systems, I was teaching myself how to. It was so early in the technology,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was teaching myself how to use the tools, how to be a programmer, how to do all those things, and it created an advantage for me where I could go get a job at a Boeing or a NASA or somewhere, right? It helped me go to college. I was a night school student, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so what you want to do if you're going to be an ambitious learner, you got to make this part of your portfolio, and it's not rocket science, and it's not difficult. And while you've got free access to this almost until the elephants decide to charge you $500 a month for it, take advantage of it.
Yeah,
Is what is my message.
love that. Not what I'm hearing you say there is, don't be afraid of it. Don't be
Mm-mm.
afraid of what it can do or what it might do. Lean in, find a
Mhm.
way to make it work for you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
love
you
that.
can't afford not to use it.
That's true. Oh, man, I love
If
that.
I'm a striver, you can't afford not to become proficient with these tools.
Love that. That's deep. Love that. Good, Randy. Thank you so much. This insight. I think our listeners, our audience is very diverse. There are folks like you, and there are folks who are, our moms and dads types.
Mhm.
Who are just proud of us,
Yep.
community members. But there are a lot of folks out there who are trying to figure out how to really put this stuff into play,
Yeah.
either for their classes or for themselves. So I appreciate you,
Mhm.
Matt. You got any final thoughts?
Again, just appreciate you, Randy, coming on. And as a parent, I think a lot of people get caught up in being on the fence whether to trust this or not. But to understand that it's not going to replace somebody, only make you more productive moving forward, to kind of help ease some concerns of folks. But we appreciate you coming on to speak on that with us.
You bet. I'm around, easy to contact. If I can help anybody, let me know.
Yeah, I got a feeling this won't be our last work through on this topic with our courses. So
Mm-hmm.
You guys are younger than me. You'll spend the rest of your career talking about this.
Oh,
Probably. You know, I don't know how long I got 23 years in, Randy. You know, I don't know. I think that my next career might be shoveling gravel or something.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Anyway, thank you so much for being here, man. I appreciate you carving time out of your day. Good deal. Matt, wrap this thing up.
absolutely. Again, as always, anything that we have spoken about, if you would like to visit our website, that is at trainforalabama.com, trainforalabama.com. And this is going to conclude another episode of Innovation Unplugged. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow on all your social media platforms. Have a great afternoon.